Imagine you were in a room full of like the most senior engineers at your company. A multi-million-dollar software system is completely down. Revenue is just vanishing by the second, right? Everyone's freaking out.
Oh, yeah. Absolute nightmare scenario.
Exactly. So the company's new AI triage system spits out a diagnosis and it says, here is the fix, do this. But two veteran engineers look at the dashboard and they just know the AI is missing something crucial, like they feel it in their bones. And here's the crazy part, they follow the AI's instructions anyway.
Right. And you have to ask yourself why.
Yeah, why? Because we aren't just getting lazy with our technology. Something much deeper and honestly much, much quieter is happening to our critical thinking. And that is exactly what we are unpacking in today's deep dive. So welcome.
It really is, it's sort of the defining anxiety of the modern workplace, isn't it? We have this pervasive fear that because the machine is doing all the heavy lifting, our cognitive muscles are just naturally atrophying, like we're just getting dumb.
Yeah, the whole AI makes us lazy argument.
Right. But that scenario with the engineers, that points to a completely different structural problem.
Which is why we're pulling apart this specific concept today. We are diving into a fascinating framework by writer and independent creator Leah Portal. It's called Authority Drift. And we're pulling this directly from her multi-domain storytelling universe, The Leah Show, specifically looking at her foundational articles from March and June of 2026.
Those are fantastic pieces.
They really are. And Portal argues that, when you use an AI tool, worrying about it making you lazy is just completely missing the target. What's actually happening is that we are quietly handing over the authority of judgment. And nobody, officially signed off on it.
Yeah, there's no memo. And what's so compelling about Portal's work here is the sheer structural rigor she brings to something that usually just feels like a vague workplace vibe. Like, she isn't just saying, oh, we rely on tech too much. She defines the exact mechanism of authority drift, the 5 specific conditions that make it happen, why it's fundamentally different from just trusting a machine, and how it quietly rewrites the rules in high-stakes environments.
Okay, so let's get into it, because how do we actually know if this is happening to us? Are we just talking about a gut feeling, or is there a concrete way to measure this shift? Let's start with the basics. How does she actually define authority drift?
Right, so Portal defines it very strictly. Authority drift is the gradual shift in perceived legitimacy from human agents to automated systems. And it's specifically driven by what she calls repeated cognitive delegation.
Okay, wait. Repeated cognitive delegation. I want to pause there because that sounds like the actual engine of this whole phenomenon.
It absolutely is the engine. And the operative word there is repeated.
Right.
Let's say you ask a system to analyze a massive data set or compare 2 legal contracts, and you just do it once.
Like a one-off thing.
Exactly. That doesn't cause drift. That is a single, isolated interaction. The invisible force of the drift comes from the repetition. As you repeatedly hand over those cognitive tasks day after day, the system begins to function as an authority without ever formally receiving that title.
Okay, let me push back on that a bit because, I use a lot of automated workflows. I'm sure you listening do too. I have smart filters that sort my emails. I use macros and spreadsheets. Does that mean every time I use a smart workflow to save time, I'm surrendering my soul to the machine?
Well, no. And that's a really crucial nuance of Quorn. Portal addresses in the text. Not every use of an automated system and not every act of delegation transfers authority.
Okay, good. Because I need my email filters.
Right. I mean, think about a calculator. A calculator radically accelerates your work. It does the math flawlessly and instantly.
Sure.
But the professional judgment, knowing why you need to calculate those specific numbers and deciding what the final result actually means for your budget, that judgment stays firmly with you.
Yeah, it's kind of like using GPS. Using it once is just getting directions. But if you use it every single day for years, you literally lose your own mental map of the city. You don't know where you are anymore.
That is a perfect analogy. The calculator accelerates work, but AI participates in complex analysis. It summarizes nuanced reports. It frames arguments. When you repeatedly delegate those kinds of tasks, it changes how credible the system appears to you over time.
Because it's not just doing math anymore. It's actively shaping the reality of the information you're looking at.
Exactly.
Which brings up a scary thought. If it's shaping reality, how do I even spot it? Because if it's gradual, it sounds incredibly difficult to notice in the moment.
You mentioned earlier that Portal has a rigorous 5-part structural framework to identify this. How does this actually manifest?
Let's walk through it as a process, because for a phenomenon to truly be authority drift, Portal argues it must meet all 5 structural conditions. The first is direction.
Meaning it moves a certain way.
Right. Drift isn't random. The perceived authority must be moving away from human agents and directly toward automated systems.
That makes sense. It's a one-way street. So what drives that movement?
That's the second condition.
Yeah.
Force, which goes right back to our engine-repeated cognitive delegation. It's that daily habit of asking the system to do the thinking for you.
Got it. And the third?
The third condition is gradual accumulation. This is why it's so hard to spot. It doesn't happen in a single dramatic boardroom vote where everyone declares the AI is the new boss. It builds invisibly over time.
Right. It's not a light switch.
Exactly. And that brings us to the fourth condition, which is a continuous variable. The thing that is actually accumulating on the machine side is perceived legitimacy. It's a variable that just ticks up a little bit at a time.
Okay, perceived legitimacy. We definitely need to circle back to that phrase in a second. But what's the fifth condition?
The fifth, and this might be the most dangerous for organizations, is the non-formal state transition.
Oh, here is where it gets really interesting. Because a non-formal state transition sounds incredibly sneaky. If I'm hearing you correctly, this means the practical authority changes even if the formal rules or the company org chart stay exactly the same.
Precisely. If you look at the employee handbook, it explicitly states the human is always in the loop. The formal rules haven't moved an inch, but in reality, the human is just a rubber stamp for the machine's decisions. The state of the organization has transitioned, but nobody updated the paperwork.
Right, so the company handbook says you're in charge, but in practice you're just clicking approve on whatever the AI says.
Exactly.
Let's go back to that fourth condition you mentioned, though. Perceived legitimacy. Why does Portal single out that specific phrase? Why not just say, we trust the AI more or we rely on its accuracy? Because those are the words we use every day.
She uses it because perceived legitimacy is a profoundly different concept from trust or accuracy. Let's break those down. Accuracy can fluctuate from answer to answer, right? And AI might be accurate today and hallucinate tomorrow.
Yeah, we've all seen that.
And trust is episodic. You might trust the system to format your code, but you wouldn't trust it to write a sensitive apology to a major client. And formal decision rights are just what's written on paper.
So how is perceived legitimacy different?
Perceived legitimacy means the system is treated as having the actual standing to shape judgment. It means the system's output carries inherent weight. It frames the baseline reality of a discussion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this leads to a major governance warning in Portal's text, the oversight illusion. Every company right now is saying, don't worry, we mandate human oversight. But formal human oversight does not stop authority drift.
Wait, really? Even if a human reviews everything?
Even then. Because if the humans accept the system's judgment by default, if they just skim the text and hit approve, legitimacy has already shifted.
Oh, I see. Think about your own job for a second, listener. If you use an AI to summarize a 30-page report and you stop reading the original report because the AI summary just, feels complete and sounds professional, you've just granted it perceived legitimacy.
Exactly. You are no longer evaluating the information, you are evaluating the system's summary of it.
To really ground these abstract concepts, we need to look at that real-world example Portal provides, the one I mentioned at the very beginning, because it perfectly illustrates this whole non-formal state transition.
Yes, the software outage scenario. It's a brilliant example.
It really is. So let's reset the scene. A major SaaS company has a massive server outage. Revenue is literally tanking by the minute. Everyone, leadership, engineering, is crammed into a war room. They use this expensive AI triage system, and it ranks the incident and says, here is the recommended fix.
Right.
But two senior engineers look at it and they disagree. They think the AI is completely wrong.
Now watch the dynamic shift in that room. Nobody explicitly says the AI is the boss, but notice where the discussion starts. It starts from the system's recommendation. The system has become the practical reference point for the entire crisis.
Right. The AI set the baseline.
Exactly. And Portal points out this critical, chilling sentence that inevitably gets spoken in that room. We need a reason to override the system.
Oh, man. That gives me chills.
It should. Because disagreement with the machine now requires greater justification than simply agreeing with it. The burden of proof is completely flipped.
Think about the incredible risk dynamic that creates for those engineers. If they override the AI and they fail, they're going to get fired, right? Why didn't you follow the multi-million-dollar data system?
Well, their careers are over.
But if they just follow the AI and the AI's fix fails, well, it's the system's fault. It was a glitch. It's defensive reliance. The humans are officially responsible on the org chart. But practically, they are totally subservient to the machine to protect their own jobs.
Defensive reliance. It's such a powerful way to frame it.
It really is. Now, because the phenomenon sounds a little similar to other AI critiques, I want to clear the conceptual fog a bit. Portal has something she calls the drift test to separate authority drift from all the buzzwords we already hear. How does she distinguish it?
She is very careful to draw boundaries here. The key difference is that other frameworks describe a static moment, a behavior, or a final outcome. They don't capture the gradual directional movement itself.
Okay, give me a concrete comparison. Like, what about algorithmic authority? That sounds like the exact same thing.
It sounds similar, but algorithmic authority describes the destination. It describes the state where the AI is already in charge. Authority drift is the structural movement of how we actually get there.
Oh, I see. What about authority projection?
That's a single moment. It's when a user believes a confident-sounding AI in one specific instance. But drift requires repetition.
Got it. And automation bias or reliance, those are huge in psychology right now.
Right, but those are behavioral actions, like a pilot checking a dial less often. They don't capture the deep structural shift in who actually has the legitimacy to make a judgment call.
What about the failure of human oversight?
That's an institutional condition. It's a static gap, not the active force causing the movement.
Finally, AI disempowerment.
That is the negative outcome, the harm to the human.
Yeah.
Authority drift is the mechanism that makes that loss possible in the first place.
Okay, I love this. It's basically the difference between a photograph and a movie.
Yes, exactly.
All those other terms are snapshots of a problem.
Yeah.
But authority drift is the entire film rolling, showing the motion and the exact mechanism of how we got there.
That is a perfect translation for the listener. And speaking of mechanisms, Portal actually distills this entire movement into a single symbolic equation to map out the domino effect.
Right. I saw this in her text, and I'm going to be honest, it looks like a math equation, and I almost panicked. It's like R up arrow, F down arrow, S default up arrow, L system up arrow, H authority down arrow.
I know it looks intimidating, but let's decode it for everyone listening, because it maps perfectly to human behavior.
Please do.
Okay, so R is repeated delegation. As the amount of repeated delegation goes up, the F, which is the friction of returning to the system, goes down.
So it just gets easier and easier to ask the AI to do the work.
Exactly. Because that friction drops, using the AI becomes the system default. It's just how you do the work now.
Right. You do it 3 times, and it's your new habit.
Yeah. Therefore, the perceived legitimacy of the system goes up. And finally, as a direct result of all those dominoes falling, how human practical authority goes down.
Repeated delegation up, friction down, system default up, legitimacy up, human authority down. Okay, that actually makes total sense. But let me ask you this. Are we saying human behavior can just be calculated like a math problem?
No, not at all. And Portal includes a very crucial caveat here. She explicitly states this is a conceptual representation of a proposed directional mechanism.
Meaning it's not a literal mathematical law.
Right. It is not an empirical proof. It's not a diagnostic score. And it's not some inevitable, unstoppable sequence. It is just a conceptual map of the mechanism.
Which brings us to the boundaries of what Portal is actually claiming in these articles. When you introduce a big theory like this, people tend to win away with it and apply it to everything. What exactly is she establishing, and what is she leaving out?
The foundational article strictly establishes the structural boundaries and the directional mechanism of the drift. Period.
So what remains outside those claims?
What remains outside are the specific measurements of this drift in different industries. Like, how does this look in a hospital versus a bank? She saves those for future market trajectory analyses. Also, she is absolutely not making a claim that AI is inherently bad.
Right. It's not a manifesto against technology.
Exactly. It merely maps the shift. It's about understanding the infrastructure of our own decision-making.
Honestly, this completely changes how I'm going to look at my screen tomorrow. And for you listening, I want you to really think about your own workflows. Next time you accept a system's output just because it's fast and the text sounds incredibly fluent, stop and ask yourself, am I really evaluating this information, or have I already granted the system the legitimacy to decide for me?
That is the exact reflection Portal wants us to have. And she leaves us with one final, deeply provocative thought in her closing warnings. As this drift accelerates, these systems are beginning to take part in judgment, in learning, and even in the creation of meaning itself.
Meaning? Wow.
Right. But these systems have never gone through the human evolutionary process. They don't have lived experience. So if we are quietly handing over the authority of meaning-making to entities that have never actually lived, What happens to the future development of human society?
That is, that is heavy. We started this deep dive asking a simple question about whether AI was making us lazy, and we ended up realizing we might be outsourcing the very architecture of human meaning, all because we didn't want to deal with the friction of thinking.
It really makes you pause, doesn't it?
It does. So stay curious out there. Keep your critical thinking exactly where it belongs with you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.